Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this in-person meeting of the Melrose School Committee. The date is June 22nd, 2021. My name is Jen McAndrew. I'm the chair of the school committee. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded. For purposes of taking attendance, would you please call the roll, Ms. Hogan?
Mr. Obremski?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Ms. Razzie Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Selm?
Here.
And Ms. McAndrew.
Here. And with 6 present and 1 absent, we have a quorum and are ready to proceed. We'll start as we do in person with the pledge. Please stand.
Excuse me, Ms. McAndrew, there's 5 present with 2 absent.
Sorry, the mayor is not here either. Thank you. 5 present and 2 absent. Thank you. Okay. Oh, and 6
And
present
there are 6
and
present
1
and
absent. Okay.
We have assigned seats, correct?
Yes, you're right there. Thank you. We're about to do the pledge. Mr. Mayor, you can just stay standing.
That's good.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Before we begin with tonight's agenda, I just do want to start with a few thank yous, if I could. The first and most important set of thank yous goes to everyone in the Melrose Public Schools, as we've just wrapped up last Friday a successful school year that was truly like no other. We have so much gratitude for all of our educators, our nurses, our admin staff, our custodial teams, our food services staff, our principals, administrators, the superintendent and her team, everyone who works in our schools, and especially to every student and their families. Thank you for your resiliency, your hard work, your patience, and your collaboration this year. And let me also thank everyone who helped us to get back in person in this chamber tonight, our friends at MMTV, especially Pat Doyle, the city's IT department, our DPW colleagues, several of whom are with us tonight, Chief Lyle, Diane Hogan, and a special thanks to City Clerk Kristen Foote for all of her help, and again, our gratitude. And now we will move on to the agenda. First up tonight is the report from our executive session on May 25th, 2021. On May 25th, 2021, the school committee voted to approve a new 3-year contract with the Drivers of Special Needs Children, Massachusetts Public Employees Council, Massachusetts Laborers District Council. The agreement includes the following changes. 1, an increase in the perfect attendance bonus. 2, a cost of living adjustment over the 3-year period as follows: 3%, 2%, and 2% in each year respectively. Adding a step 7 to the salary scale to acknowledge drivers who have been employed for 15 or more years, and increasing longevities as follows. After 10 years of continuous employment in the Melrose Public Schools, $475. After 15 years of continuous employment, $575. And after 20 years of continuous employment, $675. Thank you. And next is the public comment portion of our meeting. This is the portion of our meeting when the public may comment for up to 3 minutes each on matters before the committee. During this time of transition back to in-person meetings, we're also offering a remote public comment option, and we'll switch back and forth between the two if and as needed. In addition, as this is our first meeting in person in a while, and by way of reminder, in order to ensure that our meetings are orderly and efficient, the public comment will be managed in accordance with the school committee policy, BEDH. All comments should be limited to opinions on issues within the school committee's authority, and speakers shall limit their remarks to matters on the agenda for tonight's meeting. All comments about staff or personnel, except for the superintendent, will be ruled out of order. Without objection, the public comment period is open. Are there any members of the public who would wish to address the committee in person this evening? Seeing none, we do have, I believe we had one person who wanted to make a remote comment who let us know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my computer to Jill Santa Maria indicated to me that she was interested in making a remote comment. Jill, I'm going to unmute you, and then if you could go ahead, you're recognized for 3 minutes. Jill, can you hear us? Jill, you can go ahead. I see her here, but her microphone is not on. Okay. I'm going to try to send her a note. Jill, we can't hear you. If you're listening on your TV also, you might want to turn that volume down because we might not be exactly in sync.
Oh, she just left off.
Okay, and she's off. Okay, well, we tried that. And without objection, public comment is now closed. Next is the announcement of the superintendent of schools, and I know we have some very special guests with us. Dr. Kuchenberger.
Thank you, Chair McAndrew. This is always an exciting and a little bit of a sad kind of event to celebrate. Tonight we will honor our retirees, many who have been with the Melrose Public Schools for decades. I have the honor tonight to speak about 2 of our retirees. So first up is Anna Maria Melito, who I see is joining us remotely. Hi, Anna Maria. So glad to have you here, and I see that you're surrounded by some of your loved ones. So Anna Maria came to the Melrose Public Schools in 1989. She has served in many roles in the Melrose Public Schools, including lunch support, secretary, and paraprofessional before becoming an art teacher in 2001. Anna Maria Melito was an integral part of the culture at the Melrose High School and was always a champion for each and every student. Although Mr. Merrill is not here with us tonight, he did send along his regards and his gratitude and shares in these sentiments about your support and service for our students, Anna Maria. So I have a gift to you that a gift for you, rather, that I will make sure gets to you. I contemplated opening it up so you could see, but I think the surprise will be better when you're able to receive it in person. And so, Anna Maria, I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words. I believe we should be able to hear you. We're trying the technology here. Thank you for your patience. Just give us a minute. We're trying to work out the tech. 2 words we've heard too many times this year, tech glitches. Okay.
I don't think we can hear you.
We can't hear you, Anna Maria, but what we'll do is we'll go on with some of the other retirees while Chair McAndrew tries to work that out. And maybe even if you can, maybe she can call in and we could hear her that way. Yeah. Okay, we're going to work on that one. But could we all give Anna Maria Melito a round of applause? For her many, many, many years of service to the Melrose Public Schools. That is so fantastic. So up next is Angela Singer. Angela Singer has also been with the Melrose Public Schools for many years. She started with us back in 1999 and served as an English teacher, and in 2008 became the Director of English Language Arts. And when I asked Mr. Merrill if he had any words he would like me to pass along to you, Angela, he said that Angela Singer truly believes that all students can learn at a high level, truly uses an equity lens in all situations, and everyone deserved access to the best we have to offer. You've been such a critical part in our work towards achieving equity for all students, and we are so grateful for your many years of service. I'll meet you up at the table here in the front to hand you your gifts.
So I usually come to the school committee asking for something. So tonight, I would just like to say that I've appreciated your support in the last more than 20 years. And it's great to see the parents of students that I taught among you. And it's been an incredible privilege to work in this community and to work with such gifted teachers and talented students all these years. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And I know I speak for all of your colleagues when I say that you truly will be missed. Up next, I'll invite Principal Kristen St. George to the table to speak about two retirees from the Lincoln School.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I want to echo Julie's sentiments. Honoring retirees really is a privilege. And it's not something that principals get to do every year, and it is bittersweet because it is so wonderful to speak about their work, something we don't get to do often enough. But it is also bittersweet to think about the void when colleagues leave us that have such wealth of understanding and knowledge and history of our students, our families, and in our schools. I will speak first about retiring paraprofessional Gail Truly, who's with us tonight, and some of her family is with us. I'd like to thank them for coming. Gail has been an important part of the Lincoln School for 10 years. She was first a parent in the district before she worked at Lincoln. But as I learned most recently, she did quite a bit of volunteering and supporting of her own children, and then realized as they grew that she had an opportunity to support other children and chose to make Lincoln the place where she did that, and I am certainly grateful. She has worked as a building para throughout our building throughout the K-5. As we know, as parents, when we send our children to school, there are many adults that work behind the scenes throughout the day with the children, and often parents don't get the opportunity to know those adults as well as they know the classroom teachers. As a parent, I understand some of that angst when we turn the care of our children over to folks at school. And as a principal, I can say that I am truly grateful that Gail is one of those adults behind the scene working with so many of our students. She has worked with students in all of our classrooms, but then certainly has provided very targeted, skilled support to some of our more vulnerable learners. In speaking with staff in the past couple of months about Gail, there were certainly themes that they shared. They spoke of her flexibility and her tremendous patience and kindness, and some reminded me that Gail was practicing mindfulness before mindfulness was a thing. And that's really because Gail understands and recognizes that children need that kind of support, that children need adults to guide them and help them to think about themselves as learners and think about learning how to advocate for themselves and use strategies to calm themselves, to think about how they put their best self forward and how they let us know what it is that they need. And Gail has a real ability to do that. And I think it's a skill that we hone, but it's also comes from a core belief that she simply possesses and has decided to hone that skill. I want to mention, particularly this year, Gail was remote for most of the school year, and I think at the start of it all, when we were thinking about the return to school for the fall, I certainly couldn't envision what some of this would look like and how would we support children that needed to be remote. Also, some of our most vulnerable children were remote straight through the entire school year. And it takes an adult who is patient and kind, but an adult who's also willing to learn. Most of us over a certain age never would have imagined that we could do some of the things that we did remotely. And Gail really is willing to learn and flex and think differently about engaging kiddos because she did it remotely. She worked with some children that do not yet have language and do not yet have the ability in a remote setting and in an in-person setting to use language to share what it is that they need, and she did it. We probably approached Gail, easily half a dozen times this year to say, well, we have another student that perhaps needs some tiered intervention, or another change in your schedule, or another classroom teacher that has a kiddo that needs some kind of support. And Gail, she just simply says, okay. Who is it? How can I help? What do they need? And in a year where we all found ourselves reinventing every day, to be able to say, okay, what is it? What do they need? That takes a lot of commitment and a lot of patience. And I want to thank Gail, because I just joked with her when we were coming in that I think this 1 year probably felt like 9 years. So perhaps we could say that Gail's been with us for 19 years. So I do want to thank her for her patience, her nurturing, her love, her ability to help students recognize that whether they are with us in person or whether they are remote, they are a valued part of our community, and then when they are not physically with us, we will do whatever it takes to find ways to engage them and help them that they know that they belong, and do what it takes to ensure that they're accessing their learning. So she's well ahead of her time. I wish her all of the best in her retirement and thank her for her support at Lincoln. You want me to give her the gift? I will speak for a moment about our retiree, Carol Weldon, assistant principal at Lincoln. Carol joined Melrose as a career changer. When she joined Lincoln, she brought many strengths with her. Life experience from the business world, life experience as a parent, life experience from the normal ebb and flow of having worked in a variety of environments before coming to public schools. In addition, Carol brought with her the passion and energy that comes from someone who brings the choice of having changed a career, of having started on one path, enjoyed that path, but then deliberately made a decision to go back to school, earn a master's, earn a CAGS in a master's in special education, a CAGS in educational leadership, and that desire to work with kids. She brought a new energy and excitement in her work. Carol worked in fields that involved finance, information systems, and data analysis. She brought that with her when she came, but she paired it with a passion for special education and working with children. She worked in this district as an evaluation or team leader, what we now call SECs, an assistant principal, and in the role of interim principal. As a member of the Lincoln administrative team, Carol consistently pushed us to think about what it is that we need to do to support classroom teachers. She's steadfast in her commitment to ensuring that teachers have the tools, the support, and the resources that they need to provide for every student, and that they can do that with confidence, because we all know that teachers need to feel confident in their ability to be effective in the classroom. She's drawn upon her skills and passion as a special ed teacher and her skills and experiences as an analyst and an information expert to assist in our work in articulating and advocating for the needs at Lincoln. She's a consummate team player. Carol is the person I have found in Melrose that you go to when you need to get things done. In my first year at Lincoln, and to this day, I continue to benefit from her relationship building and her connections. I think we have texted and speed dialed every staff person within the DPW in the IT department. I know that these relationships are reciprocal. I remember in my first year, we needed something. I'm going to text Ann Waite. Who's Ann Waite? I'm going to text her. and it hasn't stopped. Mm-hmm. When staff in these departments have projects or tasks to complete at Lincoln, she readily asks them, what can we do to help make your jobs, your projects, or your tasks get done? She's very knowledgeable and comfortable with technology and happily steps in to assist, knowing that other departments are stretched thin, as we all are, and have competing demands on their time. I don't think there's a school in Melrose that has Chromebooks, equipment, and tools so carefully organized, cataloged, inventoried, and accounted for than Lincoln, because of her intense focus on advocating for and protecting our resources. I also know that there's not a day that goes by when I don't feel supported by our custodian, Trevor Rudolph, the entire DPW team, and the IT department, and that, I believe, is in large part due to the relationships and mutual respect that she built long before I arrived. This year, when the nurses were tasked with time-consuming tracking of wellness information of cohorts and groups, and then eventually creating pooled testing, permissions tracking, and pooled samples, Lincoln had the most user-friendly, efficient, and effective data collection tool of everyone. And that is because she knows and believes that if we support the nurse effectively and help build tools that will work efficiently, that we will all get back to the business of being with students. And that has been a support that has reduced the stress of our nurse and of the entire team. Carol is often the person behind the scenes doing what it takes to make sure the face of the school looks the way it does and has everything that it needs. That is a significant amount of time and energy. That passion was conveyed multiple times when we began to pursue personalized learning, and members of our grade 4 team, for example, joined that personalized learning cohort and got jazzed and excited about grade level mathematics goals. Carol took on the task of supporting all of the team members, supporting the newest teachers as they joined. That math passion comes right from her work in the private sector. Her special education expertise comes in when she sits with new teachers and talks about access for every child and engagement for every child and reaching every child. Last spring, when we switched over to the remote world, Carol stepped in, and her knowledge of IT once again came front and center, and her desire to make sure that teachers have everything they need. And right until the last substitute left Lincoln last Friday, Carol was the first person in the morning to make sure that that sub and the teacher that was providing for the substitute had everything they needed. That was no small task. As we watch our own daily grappling with technology just for a meeting, a brief meeting, and making sure everyone can hear and everyone can contribute, we amplify that every day in the classroom. And we are all learners, and those of us that have been in the business a long time do not arrive at the table feeling as comfortable as we might like to. Every one of those teachers felt supported, applauded, and like they had a cheerleader because they were learning alongside their students. And I go back to what I said at the beginning, that when teachers feel supported and know that they can be effective and confident, their students will have access and will succeed. I am privileged to call Carol a friend. I will continue to have her on my speed dial and in my text. It has been a privilege to have her as part of the administrative team. And I would say that we will miss her, but I have no intention of not remaining connected with her. So join me congratulating Carol. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Principal St. George. Before we move on to Roosevelt retirees, we are going to do a tech workaround, as we do, and give Anna Maria Melito a call, because I am sure she has some comments to share.
Thank you for calling the Melrose High School.
All right, get the number. That was the high school number. That's not going to work. Don't say it out loud.
Well, hello, Dr. Kuchenberger. How are you?
Hello. We're so happy we're connected.
Oh, my goodness. Woo-hoo. When technology works, it's wonderful.
So, Anna Maria, we're so happy that you're able to join us virtually, and just wanted to give you the opportunity to say a few words, if you would like.
Hi, everybody. Wow. How's it going? I didn't do graduation this year, which, Liz, you usually rescue me at graduation, offering me hugs and everything, which I appreciate. I want to thank you for that. I'm not sure my successor will be as emotional as I am, but you never know. Maybe. Thanks. It's been a long time. 32 years. I was a baby when I started in Melrose. No, I was. And, it's been a good run. I've met so many wonderful people, and I just want to say thank you. Some fun things in the future, or Mr. Merrill keeps telling me he wants me to go back to high school. I'm not sure for what, but you never know. I'm sure he'll find something.
Well, based on your resume, we know that you can do literally everything, so...
I've done a lot. Yeah, I certainly have, so thank you very much. And I wish you guys all well. This is a tough job, I know, especially now. It's been an interesting year. I will say that my Melrose students did not disappoint. Even though, it was definitely different. Not exactly the easiest way to build relationships, but I think I managed all right. So, that's about it. So thank you very much, and I will see you guys around, I'm sure.
All right, Anna Maria, thank you. Next, I would ask Principal Moranto to join us at the podium.
Actually, I'm going to have the retirees join me. if you don't mind. Thank you. I want to stand next to them because I feel like they have stood next to me during my entire years at Roosevelt, and this is really the foundation of some of the academics going on. So just a little bit about each one of them. I was trying to think of just a word that would describe them, and I'll start with Linda, and my word for Linda is lovely. Linda created a peaceful, calm culture in her classroom and she also brings that calm culture to groups and meetings and things and allows people to express themselves, but she's always there to support us. And her classroom was welcoming, productive, and she is wildly empathetic. So Linda, thank you for how that impacted our students. Maureen has taught generations of students. Her drive to be creative and go above and beyond has allowed her students to progress academically and, most importantly, to feel confident about their learning. Maureen was out delivering during COVID, making sure all her students had what they needed, and that was her creativity. And Anne, I'm not sure who had more fun in your classroom, whether it was you or the students. Anne had her songs, her chants, her rhymes, her student nicknames, and it was wildly fun to learn in her classroom. Her connection to tennis, Tom Brady, and her shining stars made her students happy. The students could not interrupt her at a reading table unless Tom Brady walked in. So that was definitely, I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but anyway, so those are the things that I remember and will hold dear in my heart about these teachers. And I've known that they were going to be retiring for a little while, so I've been trying to think of what do I summarize, how do I honor them in a way that is worthy, and there really isn't a way. But I shot out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning one morning and I wrote a poem. I don't write poems, and don't worry, Julie, I'm not quitting my day job. So this is my poem for the three of them, and they have heard it at our school retirement, but I just wanted to say it again. So the poem is called The Kids Come First. The kids always came first for these teachers. They continued to advocate for additional or appropriately placed staff because the kids came first. They met countless times with the administration to be sure things were done right because the kids came first. They spoke up at meetings because the kids came first. They took the lead in collaborative groups because the kids came first. They joined school-wide committees because the kids came first. They received feedback and they took hours of professional development to help them grow in their craft because the kids came first. Linda, Maureen, and Anne, never doubt it. Your years of amazing, tireless teaching has paid off. The kids who came first are better for having you as their teachers. Maureen?
I'm going to go first because I want to get it over with. It's nerve-wracking. I grew up in Melrose. I attended St. Mary's and the Melrose schools, and I actually in the 70s did my student teaching at Roosevelt School. So I taught for 32 years, but 25 of them has been at Roosevelt, and it was such a great honor to work there. I did regular ed for 5 years, and for the last 20 years, special ed. But I will be known as the cooking club after-school teacher for the rest of my life. That's how I'm known. I just, it's very emotional for me to leave, and I kept hanging on, and my children said, you have to leave sometime. You have a house in Florida, you need to go there. But I just hope, my only goal in life was to make a difference, a positive difference. And if I've achieved that, I feel like I've accomplished it, I'm ready to go. And I think... Yeah.
and congratulations. Thank you. No, go ahead. Bring it in. Bring it in.
Well, everyone knows I like to talk, but
3 minutes is the rule, right?
this time, I'm used to, good evening, everyone. I'm used to 6-year-olds who are just about this high, so it's a little bit intimidating in front of all of you. It was a great joy and a great pleasure to teach at the Roosevelt School and at the Hoover School. And as a first grade teacher, I'm not only a teacher, I act as their mom, their nurse, their lawyer. And it's been a great experience, but however, and I have treasured memories, but however, the greatest joy is to watch one of my students and all of my students celebrate their success as they leave the classroom. So thank you very much.
Linda, I'm going to give this to you, but I do have to say one thing. Linda and Maureen, I'm sorry, but I'm going to miss Anne the most because she's the only one that laughs at my jokes. The only one. So I'm really going to miss that. But congratulations, Linda. Nice job.
When I got my teaching job 35 years ago, I started at the Lincoln School and then moved over to the Roosevelt. And when I got my job, a teacher friend of mine gave me something for my first classroom, and it was it was a frame that said, "Treat every child as if they're the only ones in your class." And I feel like I did.
You did.
So, and I wanted to pass that on to new teachers, that's all.
You did.
Thank you so much for all of those beautiful words and words of inspiration. We do have one other retiree this year. Kelly Conley could not be with us tonight, but she has been a paraprofessional in the district since 2008. She currently works at the ECC, and I know if Principal Rosso was here, she would be talking about the many ways that Kelly advocates for all of her kids, the many ways that she goes above and beyond, just like all of you, to do whatever it takes to make sure that each student who walks through those doors at the ECC can be successful. So we miss Kelly tonight, but we thank her so much for her many years of service, and once again want to thank all of you for all of the success you've had and the many lives you have changed. Thank you.
Anywhere that's easy for you. Sure, do you want to have everyone come up? Retirees want to come over? We'll grab one more picture photo, and then we'll, with the superintendent too.
Julie, you want me to take you with them?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think Jen's going to do it.
Yeah, but then people.
Me and all of you, 178 years of service, if not more. Thousands and thousands of children and thousands of families that you have impacted and loved, brought out of their shells, protected them, and all the things that you did. So thank you so much. Portraits are better, you know.
I thought you were going to photobomb that picture. I thought you were going to photobomb that picture.
Let's change. All right, I'll do it. Hold on, one more. get back to the show, right?
Yes. All right.
Jen, thank you so much.
I had to do that last night.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And do you have more? What's that? Do you have more? Just. All right.
Those women made such an impact on my kids. Oh my God, they're like the institution. Unbelievable. Mrs. Forrest's class was so much fun.
For that, and thank you especially to our retiring educators for their amazing service to Melrose and our students. And I believe we have more of the superintendent's update on other topics.
Yes, just one other update tonight. I know there's been a lot of community interest and inquiry about the middle school access program, and I just wanted everyone to know that we are currently doing a needs assessment. We hired an outside consultant a couple of weeks ago in order to make sure that teacher voices are heard, administrators' voices are heard, and they're also doing some data analysis. What we want to make sure we're doing is answering the most important question, which is what are the essential supports and services our middle school students need next year to realize their full potential and to have the greatest amount of success. So I anticipate having that report in the next couple of weeks, and we'll absolutely be communicating out to the families, the community, of course, the school committee, the decisions that come of that. But I want the community of Melrose to know that we are fully committed to making sure that all of our students are getting the exact right supports and services that they need to be successful. That concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee for the superintendent at this time? Trustee Thomas.
When will we know the results of the SEAM collaborative assessment of the access program and the needs and all that?
So they met with teachers last Wednesday while they were still on schedule. They met with administrators on Friday, and then it's just a matter of, how much data that they're looking to access. We have a list, and we've begun preparing that for them, and I anticipate by the end of June we should have a good sense of what some of their findings are and some recommendations for next steps.
So can we make sure that it's on the agenda at the end of July to talk about or hear about?
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
And there may even be an opportunity to communicate more widely before that in writing.
And just one other quick question. Are the students as well as the parents going to be involved in the gathering of information?
So at this time, it's really looking at just the internal needs, the programs and structures at the middle school. I'm not sure if that will be a next step that they recommend or not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, next on our agenda is the consent agenda, which tonight consists of the following items. Melrose High School field trip request for Florida, textbooks for recycling, policies as follows: the committee and superintendent relationship, standing subcommittees, advisory committees to the school committee, school councils, and legal counsel, as well as donations and the following warrants. Fiscal year 21 warrant S21113 in the amount of $646,557.29. Fiscal 21 school athletics refunds S21114 in the amount of $7,112.35. Fiscal 21 school debit card S21115 in the amount of $65.90. And fiscal 21 school warrant S21116 in the amount of $26,556.07. Are there any items that any member of the committee would like to remove from the consent agenda? Mr. Selm.
Thank you. I would like to remove the MHS field trip request, please.
The field trip request will be sent to EP&P. Anything else? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda made by Ms. Razzie Thomas, seconded by Mr. O'Connell? All in favor? And that motion carries 6 in favor, and 1 absent. Thank you. Next, we move on to the work of our subcommittees. And first up is Finance and Facilities with Ms. Razzie Thomas tonight. Thank you.
Been so long.
Okay. Sorry, I have
That's okay, you got a few things.
I'll get better at this part.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Finance and Facilities. We have a presentation tonight on capital improvements and summer projects, and I believe that Elena Proakis-Ellis, the Director of the Department of Public Works, will be explaining the presentation to us. There's also a really interesting capital improvements program report that gives you a big overview of all the projects that they've been thinking about working on over the last 4 years. So I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent to introduce it.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Razzie Thomas. I'm so happy to have Elena and Jay here with you tonight. We have been working so closely with DPW all year long. Really, the first in-person meeting I had back on July 1st, 2020 was with Elena and Jay, preparing ourselves for the sheer volume and amount of work that we would have to do. I have to say it was super exciting to see some of the floor decals being peeled off the high school floor already. Another sign that we are getting back to a bit more normalcy in our public schools. With that being said, they do have a ton of work ahead of them this summer. We're doubling our elementary summer learning programs, and we are also utilizing 4 of our 8 schools. So the challenges before them are just as great as last summer. They're just a little bit different. And we're excited to also move forward with some of the projects that we weren't able to do last year because we were talking all things COVID all the time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Elena and Jay for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And so Jay McNeil is here. I assume we're being recorded. He'll be joining me at the table when he's done advancing the slides. So as a starting point, we just need to thank and acknowledge all of the facilities staff, our custodial staff, our tradesmen, Jay. The facility staff have really gone above and beyond this year to keep our students safe and keep the schools clean and sanitized every single night. And it's really been a heavy lift for them, and they've done a fantastic job. So I just wanted to acknowledge all of their hard work. So I tried to keep my presentation brief. I can be very long-winded when I want to be, so I thought we'd just focus on 3 items: our upcoming capital projects, our long-term capital planning, and then our summer 2021 projects. So as I started to put together the list for this meeting of our capital projects, I was trying to decide how to break them down and how best to frame them. And I think it sort of fell out naturally that the funding sources really drive which projects we're able to do in any given year. And actually, once I started amassing the list of all of our capital work and adding up the totals, I was sort of amazed by the total sum of work that we're planning to do in the next fiscal year, and then a little nervous as well about our capacity to complete millions of dollars worth of work in one fiscal year. But we are up to the task. So these are the general categories. Free cash, we have some balances in some old bond accounts from prior capital work that are school specific, capital stabilization funds, grants, new bonds, and then our operating budget. So we had a long free cash list that we approached the City Council with this year, and fortunately everything got approved that was on our list. So the $300,000 up at the top was actually approved in at the tail end of last fiscal year, but we just haven't had the time with all the COVID-related items to really complete this project. We're bringing on a consultant to help us with the bid documents. So that's a doors project across various schools. We have exterior work at the Roosevelt. There's an area that's been eroding. It's been a chronic problem. And areas that need repaving and fencing around the playground. And so that's all going to be accomplished with this $100,000. At the high school, there have been problems with deterioration at the front entrance, and so we're tackling that. We've actually already completed a portion of that work from some of the old bond funds, and now we're proceeding with the new free cash allocation. We have $100,000. Again, this project has $400,000 in old bond funds from when the Learning Commons was built, and now we're trying to fix the roof above the Learning Commons and supplementing it with this additional $100,000. We want to make sure we're protecting that investment that was made in the Learning Commons. It's a beautiful place, but we do have roof leaks, and we really need to fix that before we start damaging our new investment. The Franklin and the Ripley are both in desperate need of new roofs, and they do not qualify for the MSBA accelerated repair projects. So we're proposing to hire a design engineer for $150,000 to do the roofing and also advance the design of, there's a Franklin door and window project that was in the citywide CIP, and we thought this was an opportunity to bring in a consultant, have them do the design plans for both buildings at once, and then we put it out to bid this fiscal year, and we plan for next fiscal year to request the funds for the construction. And then at the Hoover, we are applying for an MSBA accelerated repair project where they would cover hopefully 50% of the cost and we would cover the other 50%. So we've estimated our share as $400,000, and again, that was approved free cash in this most recent round. So that's a total of $1.125 million right there, just in free cash projects that we want to advance this fiscal year. Capital stabilization funds are a fund that the finance department maintains at a certain level every year to be sure that we have some backup for when something is a dire need. And they draw down to a particular amount, and then they tend to replenish that with free cash. So in a sense, this is another free cash account, but it just gets there in a more circuitous way. Patrick Delarusso, our CFO and auditor, put aside $425,000 in the capital stabilization fund for the Horace Mann roof. Again, we're chasing MSBA funds for that project. And actually, Jay, if you do go to that next slide, there's the other half of the Hoover roof and the Horace Mann roof where we're trying to get those MSBA accelerated repair funds. So that would be a total of another $825,000 plus the $425,000 from capital stabilization. So that's another $1.2 million. So now we're up somewhere in the $2.3 million range. As you all know, we're looking at, well, we've just hired a consultant, a design consultant for improvements to the Beebe School, and the estimated cost for that project that's been set aside in bond funds is $2.92 million. That's in our city debt model, and the city stays under the 5% threshold of, the way it's been explained to me is for every dollar of tax money, the CFO auditor doesn't ever go above 5 cents of that being spent on replenishing, on paying for debt service. So we still have capacity there for more school projects as we need them in the coming fiscal year. And the $2.92 million has been in the debt model for a while for the Beebe School. And then there's operating funds. I think, yeah, I think it jumped. So keep going, one more. Next one. Yes, okay. So we also have a very aggressive schedule for just out of our DPW operating budget, out of the facilities line items. We're planning a new boiler in the Winthrop School because we desperately need one, and we need to do that before the heating season starts. We're estimating that around $70,000. We are doing a bunch of LED lighting projects that Martha Grover, our sustainability manager, has gotten some element of grant funding, and then there's a portion that's paid for by the city. And we're trying to pay as much of our portion as possible through existing operating funds. and we were able to achieve the majority of our contributions with FY21 funds in the facilities budget. So that's allowing us to do the Winthrop LED lighting, Horseman LED lighting, the high school lighting in the hallways and the cafeteria, and lighting in the gym, and some light lenses also at the high school, and then at the middle school, LED lighting in the hallways and the gym. And then there are a couple other lighting projects I think we'll get to on the next slide that are, we didn't have the money in fiscal 21, but if we can fund them in fiscal 22, we would love to do them. Actually, Jay, if you could jump back for 1 second. Oh, and then the last two there are, we're doing some sort of stopgap measures of roofing repairs at the Hoover to fix a very immediate leak that's causing a lot of internal damage in the stairway. And then the associated repairs in the stairwell, we have to get staging and the like. And then at various schools, we're also doing window repairs. We've estimated that at another $10,000. We've been doing that continuously throughout COVID. We had a contractor in doing windows in all the municipal buildings here in City Hall and in the schools. And we have a number of items left to complete on that list. And then at the high school, the domestic hot water system, we've been wanting to upgrade that for quite some time, and we're hoping to get a Green Communities grant to offset a portion of that cost as well. And then we're applying for Green Communities grants for the Hoover and the Lincoln LED lighting upgrades, and we don't know yet what our share of those would be. Then on top of that, we have asbestos compliance. Jay has just gotten his licenses or completed the classwork for his licenses to be a certified asbestos inspector planner. Didn't want to get it wrong. And so he's going to be looking with a careful eye at all the places where we have floor tiles that are compromised that need to be replaced. And so those projects, that'll be a priority for this summer. We're talking about looking at school signage all over the school campuses and doing an inventory of what we have and what's faded and what needs to be replaced. Initially, we're going to be looking more at replacing the more street sign type signs that we would do in-house, but then they're also going to be the larger, welcome to the Roosevelt School type signs that we'll have to work with the school district and the PTOs and anyone who typically contributes to those and see where the needs are and what we can do. We've had chronic problems with the nurse's office HVAC at the high school, so we're working on that. We may have already actually fixed that by the time we're doing this presentation. We're hoping that's the case, but we'll continue to pay attention to it if it isn't fixed. And then we've also had sewer backups. This year has been a terrible year for sewer backups. I think there was kind of a slowdown in usage in these buildings during COVID, and I think a lot of scale built up on the inside of some of the older cast iron pipes. That combined with flushing of things that shouldn't be flushed, paper towels, wipes, feminine products. We've had chronic backup issues in certain locations, and so there may be some plumbing improvements that we can make to try to ameliorate some of those issues. A lot of those are TBD on the costs because we don't have those numbers yet until we really get into the projects. So just pausing there for a moment. So those are the projects that we're looking at for fiscal 22, and the total is well over $2 million. I didn't put a total there because we have so many TBDs, but not even counting the BB school, we're well over $2 million, and that's work that Jay and his team really need to spearhead. We'll bring in consultants where we can, but that is our goal, to get those projects done this year. But it is going to be tough to get through that much work, but we are certainly going to try to achieve all of that. So then getting into capital planning. So there was the citywide capital plan that was done in 2019, and that included school projects, but it really didn't include facilities projects to the level of detail that the DPW would like to have in our own long-range plan. So the city will be doing another capital plan soon, and the larger items will get incorporated into there again. But we're trying to do across all municipal buildings and across our whole DPW portfolio of operations and everything, a capital plan that looks about 5 years ahead, maybe a little longer, and really identifies what the major needs are going to be, and then other things that we just know have a certain lifespan that are probably going to be coming up within that 5+ year period that will require replacement. So we put this together as a draft of the highest priority items. Some of them span across, like the asbestos floor tile removal. They span the entire capital program because each year we know we're going to chip away little by little. We've thrown a rough number at that of $50,000 a year of asbestos removal. We know that the school logo, there's an inventory being done of every place where the feathers still exist on the school logo. So we are preparing for FY23 that we will likely need to do some painting or some other replacement of materials. We know the banners in the gym all have the logo. That's going to be a huge expense. I'm not sure where the funding will come from for that, but that's something that we know will be part of that project. We have window treatments in a lot of the schools. We heard that in many schools from the principals when we did walkthroughs, which we'll talk a little bit more about during the summer project discussion. Franklin roof, window, exterior doors. So that's the project that we're designing this year. We're anticipating bidding it for next year's construction. We have some flooding problems in the Winthrop in one of the hallway that connects the modular, and so we'd like to address that ASAP. The Lincoln and the Roosevelt both have HVAC work, controls work that we'd like to do, and maybe some of that will qualify for some grants as well because some of it might increase energy efficiency. Fire panels at the Roosevelt and the Lincoln. We're anticipating that can be kicked out to the later years because it's not an immediate need, but it was in the citywide CIP. So I made sure to capture anything that was in the citywide CIP that we know is going to be a need in this plan. And then the BB roof replacement, I put that out at fiscal 26 because I'm assuming that the immediate needs will be captured in the $2.9 million project we're undertaking this year. But full replacement of the roof is not likely to be able to be captured in that budget and is going to be needed eventually. But maybe by fiscal 26, we have MSBA, we can do an MSBA accelerated repair project because it will then be a public elementary school and it would qualify. And then the remainder of the higher priority needs. The middle school, we've been looking at air conditioning. That was also in the citywide CIP. It's also been thrown around that the middle school is potentially an emergency shelter location. When we did our municipal vulnerability preparedness and our hazard mitigation plan a couple of years ago, that came up repeatedly along with Memorial Hall as possible shelter locations. We have these locations proposed for shelters that don't have generators that cover the whole building and don't have air conditioning in the whole building. And so if it's a very hot day and we have some sort of event that requires sheltering, these aren't really viable locations. So that's something that's a priority for that reason, in addition to just for the students and the staff. The middle school also has a chronic settling problem, and so we would like to have a geotechnical engineer come in and look at what's going on with the settling along the front of the building and in the hallway downstairs. You can see cracking in the floor tile. We have some security improvements, just rekeying of locks, getting things a little more standardized so that we know what we have and we know where all the keys are. Bathroom renovations at the high school, that's been a discussion for ages. I put it in 2 separate years, figuring that will have to be a phased project. I think it's too big to bite off all at once. Also, it's not going to be done in the summer, so it's going to be something that's going to have to go into a school year, and so I figured phasing so that we have enough bathrooms in service in different areas of the school. And then the third floor renovations at the high school are a big one, where when the bubble comes up to the high school, we need that space. And Julie has brought this up at every meeting for the last several months, that's a project that we don't want to be caught at the end needing that project and not being ready. So we need to start looking at a design architect and getting that project out to bid to retool that space. So those were our highest priority capital items. Again, this will have to dovetail with any citywide planning that's done, and also with that bonding capacity that I mentioned before. there is a little bit of room to add select projects in. It's not like we can throw all of this work in all at once. So we have to work with the finance department to identify potential funding sources. All right, and lastly, we have summer projects. At all the schools, we're doing deep cleaning, we're removing the floor decals, as you mentioned, stripping and waxing floors, cleaning out the all-purpose rooms, the gyms, cafeterias. We've had storage in those all year long. We want students to be able to use those when we get to September. We're trying to determine which furniture is usable and should be kept, and which furniture teachers want back, and then which furniture is old and needs to go to the dumpster, and then which furniture might be left over that should get into storage for the BB school. So we have a lot of moving of furniture from place to place that has to happen. And then we may need some offsite storage. We're not sure exactly how that's going to look, but there's a lot of stuff that is in good condition that might need to be kept. We'll be painting the highest need areas. We hear a lot of requests for painting when we do the walkthroughs with the principals. We can't paint a whole school, but we can certainly paint select classrooms or hallways that have issues and look, sort of dingy and not as bright as we would like. Classroom moves when teachers are moving, and then carpet cleaning. We're trying to identify the good rugs and get rid of the bad rugs, and then clean the ones that are good enough to stay within the schools. And then more with all schools, we want consistent bathroom signage. So we have gender-neutral bathrooms in every school now, but they are signed all completely differently, and so we want to standardize on a sign that conveys gender-neutral bathroom and have it across the district. And then a lot of them are also the gender-neutral bathrooms that might also be a handicap accessible bathroom. So we have to figure out how to get all the information onto one sign, and along with the pictures for anyone who can't read the sign. So there's a lot to do there. We're removing the logs that we set up last year for the outdoor classrooms. Again, we're performing that sign inventory. We're going to fix the highest need ceiling tiles beneath the leaks in the areas where they're really not looking nice. We want to spruce that up over the summer. Stair treads are always a summer project because they get really worn during the year and they have to be either taped or painted again. The hallways, the hooks and the tack rails, you can see in the picture there, we've made these plexiglass, I think they are, or what are they? Are they plexiglass?
Like safety hooks.
Yeah, little rounded safety hooks as opposed to the old style where somebody could get hurt. And most of the schools have them, but some hallways don't, and then some hallways still have the old rails behind them, and we want to remove those and just get that cleaned up and put up different, where we can, put up rails for teachers to tack things to the walls so there's not tape everywhere. And then we need to review the grounds and landscaping with our operations crew. We had requests from some of the principals just to spruce up some of the planting beds and the like. A lot of that's probably been done between when we did the walkthroughs and now, but there are still some areas that we want to give some attention to. Summer safety projects, a lot of this is the same list from last year. We have annual boiler inspections, fire alarm extinguisher and fire inspections, gym equipment inspections, pest control treatment, exhaust hood cleaning for fire prevention, water system flushing. We're improving our emergency evacuation diagrams in every classroom, HVAC filter changes, and testing and compliance of the emergency lighting systems in every school. So that by itself is actually a huge lift. Requires a lot of coordination with a lot of different contractors, inspectors who come in, and then all the documentation, and so those all have to get done during the summer. And with that, that is it. And Jay, if you want to come up and answer questions.
Thank you so much for that very thorough presentation. And it's a daunting list. Do any committee members have questions, comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I just want to take a moment and thank you guys for all of the work that you put in, not just in this presentation and propose for the summer and the future forecast, but also the work that you did this past school year in getting our buildings ready for our students, in making our buildings safe for our staff. The amount of gratitude cannot be overstated. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, ditto. No, actually, I'm going to wear my mayor hat a little bit on this front because I'm the boss, and you get a little bit of credit for that, but the credit goes to Ms. Proikasalis and Jay in particular. Folks, I think, sometimes forget that. How long have you been the director? About 150 years? You know, it's been
March 2020.
So March 2020, so a little over a year, and Jay's been on board
May
a little bit less time than that.
Yeah, just over a year.
And it's like they've been here forever. And I honestly don't, you know, people say this, so I don't know what we would have done with the efforts of the whole team, you know, new team at the schools, and it's certainly not new to the industry, but new to the particular tasks that they had to confront. It's been outstanding. It would be remiss if I didn't talk about Mr. Delarusso and the finance team, because their stewardship of the budget, and I'm not going to say free cash anymore. I like the retained earnings or retained revenue. It's a little bit better descriptor that really does, you know, the discipline that is sometimes very hard to exercise translates into the ability to do the capital projects that you saw up on the screen through the many sources that these folks cobbled together to make sure that we are moving forward on the capital improvement. So thank you guys very much for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you. I echo all of this thanks, and please pass it along to all of your colleagues as well. Thank you. I just want to say that it's sort of apt that the next item on our agenda will be enrollment projections, and I just wanted to say that especially in the middle part of your presentation, looking in the out years and the projects, I just want to thank you for being so intentional, and with the superintendent too, about what needs to be done, because at our last meeting we had a demographer who came and presented on demographic trends, and you mentioned the high school, but what is really clear is that this sort of bubble of enrollment is not really a bubble. It's a level set or a step. It's not going back down. So our elementary schools will still see all the wear and tear that you describe and then fix over the summer. The middle school will see close to 1,000 students probably at some point, which is a big increase from now, in the high school right after. So I'm just really happy to see things like the bathrooms in the high school, the third floor, AC at the middle school, all those things being considered, because we're looking at just big numbers coming up there. So thank you for all of that, and just for all that you've done, and just your willingness to be, I think you've been before us 3 or 4 times this year, just giving us updates, meeting with us, the different task force on the BB school, and everything that you do behind the scenes. I just really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just say thank you to you both again. In addition to the number of times that they've come before you, they also meet with Lee and I at least once a week, sometimes more than that. Jay and I, in the very beginning of the school year, were doing walkthroughs, all the buildings, and just the amount of time that we demand as a school system is pretty incredible, and we're just a small portion of what they do. I think Jay is responsible for over 20 buildings across the city, and the schools are just 8 of them. So if you think that seems like a daunting list, I know it's a lot to balance, and I can be pretty demanding. So I thank you so much for all you do to support our schools and our kids.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, and thanks to Leah as well. Our weekly coordination is fantastic with the 4 of us.
I have one question and one comment. So due to the pandemic, are we roughly 1 year behind in the projects that are projected and planned in the big capital improvement program? I know you had to move off of those projects in some cases, you had to do them in others, and then other things were prioritized because of the pandemic.
So the citywide CIP didn't actually identify years for the particular projects. They just grouped them into a priority A, B, and C list. And then they basically have just focused on the priority A projects. We actually have chipped away as a city at a couple of the priority B projects just as funding sources presented themselves. So I wouldn't say we're behind on any particular, there wasn't a particular time frame set. So, and then Jay and I being new to these roles, we didn't come in with something in our minds that we were going to do this on a particular schedule, and then COVID happened. We came in during COVID. So, yeah, I wouldn't say we're behind, but we're kind of starting from ground zero now and moving forward.
And so you started in your new role right as the pandemic was hitting. Jay, you were brought on, and you were brought on, all at the same time. So you're the trifecta of the team in the pandemic. But I wanted to say, you guys, the DPW really was the first to face the risk of COVID. You guys are always the first in the buildings and the last to leave. And that gave you all a tremendous amount of stress to work through, and questions and moving targets and everything. So I just cannot thank you enough for escorting us all through this year. And we're all here, and it was a lot of work. So I hope this coming year is a little easier, and you can plan ahead a little bit more carefully without everything going at Mach speed. But thank you so much for your dedication to our schools and our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes Finance and Facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Razzie Thomas. Next up is Policy and Planning with Mr. Selm.
Yes, of course. I didn't do it. It wasn't me.
Good evening. First up on Policy and Planning, we have two agenda items. The first is enrollment projections for fall 2021. At this time, I would invite the superintendent to discuss the topic.
Thank you so much, Ms. DeSelm. In your packet tonight, you have a memo that was drafted by myself in collaboration with Brittany Ferguson. So Brittany Ferguson is the face you see when you walk into central office. She is our student and staff information coordinator and has been given a tall task to try to track our enrollment, including students transitioning out of the district in the summer to fall of last year, and then students transitioning back in the district. In this memo, we've prepared for you snippets from reports that we keep regularly and we update regularly. Just earlier today, she and I were collaborating and meeting and saying, okay, how have these numbers changed since we put this memo in the packet? So there already has been some adjustments. The top table that you see here is part of a bigger enrollment projection tool that I have created and utilized with the leadership team all throughout the budget process and into the late winter, early spring as we started looking at staffing assignments. So it does a couple of things. It gives you our actual FY21 enrollment as of last Friday when we submitted this memo into the packet, kind of on the lower half there. And then up top, we're giving you those projections. And so if you think back to our demography study last meeting, a projection is really just rolling the known numbers up to the next grade. So you can sort of track that, but also see, how it's adjusting as new students or returning students are re-enrolling in the district. What we also do with this tool is we look at the number of sections per grade. So here I'm just giving you the district view, but if you were to look into the full enrollment tab or the enrollment sheet that we use as an administrative team, you would see each school has this same data, and there's actually 3 years of data there. But Brittany started just before the pandemic. And so we feel most confident about these 2 years, but we'll just keep stacking this and adding this and tracking this data every month. So we'll keep talking to you about enrollment. It's going to be a really, really important data source for us to monitor. And then when you think about sections at the elementary level, think about classroom teachers. So that's the number of classroom teachers we have divided by the total projection. So we're not really going to have any 0.1 or 0.8 kids. So of course we have to round up anytime there's a decimal point, even if it's below 0.5. So that's an important thing to consider. And then I'll just highlight kindergarten for a moment. So we're projecting at this time 316 kindergartners for next year. But we also know that more students will come and register over the summer, and there are more students returning to the district every day. So some of those kindergartners that have registered after the registration cycle are not yet placed. And the reason why we wait to place them is that we know there's going to be students who move out, and we want to try to give as many students as possible their first choice. And you saw Brittany's success rate with that. So some families are kind of eager to know what school they'll be in. Same is true for first grade and some families who are returning to us. But we want to be able to honor as many of those requests as possible. So there's these numbers really are going to be more like 325 for kindergarten next year, and close to that for first grade. The other important factor that this doesn't show is that we plan at this time to have 4 integrated kindergarten classrooms next year. So keep in mind that when we have an integrated kindergarten classroom, we try to keep those numbers around 18 because there's going to be students with known individualized specialized needs, which means that the other kindergartens will be well over 18, 19 students. Even though here that number looks like it's the sweet spot, we know that some of our schools, particularly like the Horace Mann, where we only have 2 sections per grade, their numbers will be a little bit higher. Hoover's numbers will be a little bit higher. So just to point out that these are averages you're looking at here. It's not school by school data. On the second page, we look at the number of students who withdrew. So our enrollment numbers were a little bit higher, even into August. Once we announced what our return to instruction plan was, we saw more movement. We saw more families making different choices for their student. And Brittany's done a phenomenal job to track kind of where did everybody go when they left us. And so you see that here in this table, who was homeschooled, who went to a private school, who took an extra year of preschool at some place other than the Franklin. Some families withdraw and we didn't necessarily know. That was mostly for our kindergarten families. Who moved out of Melrose, which is our largest movement, 170 folks moved out. That's pretty typical, maybe a little bit higher this year, and that's again why we're pausing on placing all of the students who haven't been placed yet, because we know families will move. And then charter and tech schools. And lastly, we look at dropout rates. And so, as you know from the last report on the class of 2020, we had no students drop out. We had a 100% graduation rate in this school year, so that's just a little comparison data. And then what she's been trying to do is track, as students come back and enroll in the Melrose Public Schools, how many of them are new to us and how many of them were enrolled here and made a different choice last year, likely because of COVID. And so for some of the students, even where it says new student, they might have been a student who was enrolled with us and then moved to a second home, so that maybe they went to Maine for the summer and they enrolled in a school there. They're coming back to us now because they have a home in Melrose, but that's considered a new student because they unenrolled, went to a different state and came back. So there's a couple of those in there in those new student numbers too. And we were thinking, like, how do we classify that so that we can get an accurate picture? So I guess all of that to say it's not a perfect tool. There's always, anytime you're looking at data, there's kind of implications that we need to be mindful of. But it's really incredible the way that she's been able to track all of this and then put it in a way that folks can just look at and get a big picture overview, which is what we're trying to accomplish with this memo. So with that, I'll answer any questions if folks have any.
Mr. Abramsky, please.
Just when you mentioned the Horace Mann, I know at our last meeting or the previous meeting, I think there were about 19 families who didn't get their first choice as the Horace Mann. And you said that you may increase the numbers there. So do you know when those families who didn't get their first choice, would they have the opportunity, would they have first opportunity to then go to the Horace Mann?
So today, I saw at least 4 emails that went out where Brittany was taking someone off the wait list and placing them. A couple of them were at the Horace Mann. I can bring that to our July meeting, what's the current number. But as soon as we see that families move out and spots open up at a school, we're following that wait list, looking at different hardships, distances, things like that. And so as soon as we can let families know, we're letting them know. But some of her conversation with families have been, I can place your child at a school now, or you can wait, and I might be able to give you your first choice. And so some families have been like, okay, thanks, I'll just wait.
Right.
So.
What do you think, specifically in kindergarten again, what would you think would be the highest we would go at the Horace Mann?
Students per class?
Students per class.
So I'm just going to pull up
I think we're at 21, like, for an average.
So specific to Horace Mann, the challenge is there can only be 2 classes per grade there.
Right.
That school doesn't have modulars like the Winthrop does or the Hoover does, and it's a densely populated neighborhood. So right now we're looking at our K classes are at 21, our first grade classes are at 20-21, seconds at 23-24, thirds at 23-22.
Right.
So we're kind of at that 23-24. We want to kind of stay there.
Oh, I got it. Right.
Because also, the classrooms in that building are small.
Yep.
So that's an added
24.
challenge. 24 is kind
24 is Matt.
Yeah. But again, we only have so many classrooms in the city. So if an influx of students moved in, we would have to place them. So if we had to go over that, we're just looking to balance it as much as we can.
And then in regards to those 19, do you know if there are any families who were fine with their second choice and didn't send a hardship letter?
I'm sure there were. We probably didn't hear from them if they were.
If they didn't send a hardship letter, then they're not considered as somebody who you would move.
What we do is, even if they don't get their first choice, she automatically puts them on a wait list. So that's separate than the hardship list is the wait list that she maintains, and she looks at both of those when placing a student.
Okay.
So people shouldn't feel like I have to email Brittany to tell her I didn't get my first choice. She knows that and is monitoring that.
Okay.
Good
Thank
questions.
You.
Any further questions? Ms. McAndrew, please.
Thank you. This is super helpful information as always. At the Franklin for the pre-K number, is that full? Or do we still have a few more spots? Is 196 or 197 or whatever?
So right now we're still looking at 14 students in our preschool classrooms. In the past we've gone up to 18. So as we see how the summer months go, again we have a wait list there. And also Principal Rosso has been doing some outreach and recruitment for families who maybe we weren't connected to this year. So that's ongoing. I do anticipate that we'll be able to increase those numbers. Everything for the fall, all signals seem good, that we should be able to do that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll just make a quick comment. So in light of last meeting's demographer review, I note that we are already skewing above what the demographic study would suggest. Specifically for next year, it says we would have 311 kindergarten students, and we're at, I believe you said 325-ish, with more expected.
Yep.
So just something to keep in mind as you said there are only so many classrooms in the district.
The other thing that Brittany and I are working on that you'll see as a regular report is month-by-month enrollment. So we're going to create a tool where you can see that, and it'll compare it to the demographer's numbers so that we can constantly see like how plus or minus how are we. And remember, he's going to come back in the fall and adjust those numbers.
Very well. That concludes enrollment projection. Next up is policies for review. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this is not a small number of documents for your review. They are all in the packet. please spend some time and review each and every one of them. Some of them I think are maybe more pertinent right now, and we should review them. I would call your attention to BEDJ, recording of minutes, BEE, public hearings, and BEDG, the minutes. I said J, didn't I? And then the voting method before that, BEDF. All of those will be impacted in some way, shape, or form with the hybrid meetings that we may be going forward with. And as such, Ms. Razzie Thomas and I will work with Solicitor Lindquist to make sure that they are in compliance. But we encourage you to pay attention and make sure that they fit with what you feel is necessary. Any questions or comments on this packet of review documents? I believe there's 13 there. Seeing none, that concludes policy and planning for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Selm. Next up is educational programs and personnel with Mr. O'Connell.
This is fun. I get to sit by everybody.
And welcome to your first in-person meeting.
I know.
Have we said that yet?
No, I don't think so.
Welcome to City Hall. Good evening, folks. This is Educational Programs and Personnel. We have one item on our agenda this evening. It comes from our consent agenda, and it is relative to the Melrose High School, Florida field trip request. For purposes of discussion, is there a motion to approve? Made by Mr. Obremski, seconded by Mayor Broder. Discussion. Ms. Razzie Thomas, please.
I just would like to hear about the educational opportunities that these wonderful musicians are going to be engaging in Orlando at Disney World.
So I don't have all the specific details of what the plans are, but I do think it would be a great idea to bring Matt Rapucci in to talk about exactly all the ins and outs of what he has planned for that, and also our plan to be flexible if and when we need to. But I don't have, outside of what's in the packet, any more specific details to share.
So there was one thing that just said each musical group will be doing one performance each, at least. I think that was the only thing that I could get out of there.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure all of what he has planned for them when they're there, or even if all of those specific details are worked out yet.
So we can approve it, but we can, if we want to approve it, we'll approve it, but we'll know more about that. Like, they're going down there to perform, not just to go to Disney World, right?
Right.
Okay.
They will learn and perform.
I just want to double check that.
there will be a good amount of fun involved.
I fully endorse and support that, but I also think it's pretty great if they get to perform down there, too. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I won't go into too many stories about myself, but I got to be in a marching band that did that little on Main Street in Disney World, and it's an awesome thing to do. So I hope they get to do that. So
Me too.
I'm eager to hear more.
Okay.
So if I may say, I can tell you my older son was part of the trip, perhaps the last time it happened. I'm not exactly sure. And I assume it's roughly the same package. And it's pretty cool. There is the one kind of premiere performance, but there's also kind of instructional modules with outside experts that kind of, pump them up a little bit, or, some folk, instructors or maestros of some renown. I mean, it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not breaking rocks in the hot sun. It's not that, make me hot. But it is a very appropriate mix of academics, enrichment, and hitting Disney World.
All right.
It's a great program.
Good.
Sure to be a memory maker.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve before us. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? We have 2 abstentions. The motion to approve passes. 4 in favor, 1 absent, and 2 abstentions, and that was Ms. McAndrew and Mr. Selm abstaining. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Superintendent. That concludes educational programs and personnel.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Moving right along. Next up tonight in the announcements of the chair, we have a few items, including the superintendent's end-of-cycle evaluation and progress report. So just a couple of notes. The memo with our timeline is back in the packet this week to remind everyone where we are in the process, but I'll just mention that tonight we'll hear from the superintendent about her progress against her goals this year. And also, I just wanted to let the committee know that after this meeting later this week, I'll be emailing you each individually a fillable form customized for you that you can just fill out, save, and return to me as part of the evaluation process. Those will be in the packet next time, so they will be public, and I will also complete a summary of those evaluations to include in the packet next time. So if you could get those back to me sometime in the second week of July or so, that would be awesome. And if you have any questions about those forms, you can just let me know, but expect to see that. And with that, I will turn it over to the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. So tonight you're going to notice that these slides look somewhat similar to the formative conversation, including the cover slide. I'm a firm believer that all learning is formative. It only becomes summative when you stop learning. I'm certainly not stopping my learning or my progress towards these goals at this point. In some ways, it feels like I've been in Melrose for years and years and years, and in other ways, I feel like, geez, I don't really know anything about that yet. I haven't quite seen all of the amazingness and potential that we have here. So formative, summative, depending how you look at it. Like all of you, I too am just full of so much gratitude. I've been reflecting on the year for months now, and when I try to remember all that we have accomplished this year, it instantly becomes overwhelming. Our teachers, our leaders, our kids, our families, all of you have adapted and adjusted and flexed and changed and responded to so much this year. It really, really is remarkable. So I just want to thank all of you for all of your support, and of course, all of the people that make this possible. Diane keeping us all on track, making sure that we're doing all of the things we need to, when we need to. The leadership team, the teachers, the business office. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and I don't want to forget anyone, but it certainly is a year to remember. So thank you all for that. Really, our objective tonight is singular. I'm just going to provide you an update on my progress to date, share some evidence of effectiveness. It's weird to think that this was also partially part of my entry plan. Things got accelerated pretty quickly, but like I said, we've really accomplished so much. So when it comes to my entry plan, I really had these 5 areas of focus. First and foremost was the comprehensive return to instruction plan, gathering feedback at multiple points, thinking about all of the ways we would be checking in with students and staff and families throughout the year. And I do feel like our return to instruction was a great success. The first time, the second time, the fourth time, and the 5th time that we had to readjust and reiterate and plan for more students to come back learning in person, while also making sure we didn't lose focus of our MDLA learners and those who chose to continue to learn from home. Engaging with the Melrose community, this has been interesting. As I try to reflect back on meetings, you usually have memories of locations, and maybe there were snacks, or maybe you were in a you had a chance encounter with someone, but most of my memories are like the Jeopardy boxes, or the Zoom boxes rather, with different faces in different places, and trying to remember who was at that meeting. But I have had a chance to connect with the Historical Commission, the Human Rights Commission, the Racial Justice Coalition on multiple occasions, Friends of Melrose Metco, Follow Your Arts, and many other community partners. And so the engagement has been great. We've done some some really unique things this year to stay engaged. The mayor and I was able to join him for the couple podcasts. We did some Ask Me Anythings on Facebook Live and StreamYard. We've used all kinds of platforms and all kinds of ways to engage families, including a thought exchange that we did back in the summer, if you remember that. So certainly a focus of my entry, and it has been so important to making sure that we were always adjusting and continuously improving. Working with all of you on the school committee is always a primary focus. Developing our relationship, and now finally being here in person together makes our relationship feel that much stronger. And then, of course, examining the budget development process. Leah and I started that process very early on, but then thinking forward to, how are we going to add our own style to the budget development process? And one of the things that we heard loud and clear from our team was that they wanted to have lots of opportunity for collaboration and lots of voice in that process. And I think together we successfully were able to accomplish that. And then the fifth focus is identifying educational priorities that included the COVID response, but also thinking forward to what will be our next steps. And that work is already well underway. The leadership team and I have been focusing on reflecting on our strategy overview. For the last several months, we have an all-day retreat planned on Friday where we're going to be doing some more reflecting, but also planning forward and, of course, some celebrating. So we're really looking forward to that time together. In addition to all of that, we have this continuous cycle for improvement that is the Massachusetts evaluation process. So the beginning of the really July, August, and this is something I'm doing all the time, I do the self-assessment, and I use the actual superintendent's rubric, and I go through each indicator and rate myself and try to think about where is the evidence of improvement. Where do I need to improve? Where do I need to push myself? And how do I kind of channel my focus? So that's an ongoing piece, even though it looks like one step in this 5-step cycle. The goal setting, we are excited to start goal setting already this July. Last year, our focus was really on the return to instruction, so goal setting happened a little bit later in the year than we would like. And I say we because I do this right alongside with our leadership team. As the superintendent, I feel that it's absolutely essential for me to be modeling what I expect for our leaders so that they can then model what they expect for our teachers. And then, of course, our teachers do that for our kids. And to me, when all of that's in alignment, that's when we have the highest level of synergy and cohesiveness. So then implementing the plan, getting to work. And one of the things you'll see in my evidence is that there's very little that I create on my own. Even when it comes to a communication that I'm sending out, multiple people usually are contributing. I really am not the star of this show, if you will, although I do get to have the honor of being immensely responsible for the work that we do. It truly is a team effort. And the greatest evidence that I have to share with you comes from our teachers, our assistant superintendents, and our leaders working together. So we did the formative back in February. Here we are at the summative. But again, it's only summative if the learning stops. And for me, this really will just roll right into my self-assessment. Once I get your feedback, that's going to fuel what my goals become, and the cycle will just continue. So my first goal was around equity and inclusion, and I'm not going to read these goals to you, but rather I'll focus on the rubric itself and the focus indicators that have been identified. So there's 40 plus indicators in the superintendent's rubric, as there are in the teacher's rubric and there are in the school leader's rubric. Of course, we're doing all of these things all of the time, but to truly set SMARTY goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, inclusive, and equitable, we have to narrow our focus. And so I've chosen 2 indicators from each standard and attached that to each of my 4 goals. So that's what you see when you see those focus indicators. The other thing, for those who aren't familiar with the superintendent's rubric, as intimately as I might be, is that for each of those standards, for each standard there's indicators and then there's sub-indicators. So here, with this goal of equity and inclusion, my focus is on standard 4, indicator B, cultural proficiency, and also standard 2, indicator be human resources and development. But when I go and I look at Standard 2 for resources and development, there's multiple elements within that. So this includes the induction and professional development and career growth strategies that we have in the district. It also includes recruitment and hiring strategies. And so we've been really working on refining that process. One of the things that we recently created toward our goal of trying to recruit and retain more diverse staff, more staff that's representative of our student body, one of the things that Dr. Adams and Brittany Ferguson and I have been working on is thinking about where do all of our jobs get posted. So School Spring is a classic place for us to post our jobs, but not everybody who isn't in the education necessarily knows to go to School Spring. So already that automatically pushes out to Indeed. That's something that existed. We're trying to expand upon that and looking at local colleges and universities so that it posts directly to their job boards. We're also looking at historically black colleges and finding out ways that we can get on their job boards, because people will come to this area from all parts of the United States if they know there's an opportunity. And then we're looking at the Massachusetts, I got to remember the acronym, but the Diversity Partnership Association, and pushing out to there. And there's a few other places that we've identified. We're learning about a tool called Handshake. So if we post on there, it automatically goes to multiple places. And the whole idea there is to cast a wider net. We're also trying to really audit ourselves for our own implicit biases during the screening process, during the interview process, and in the hiring process. And so that's ongoing. It's really in its just initial stages, but starting to bring awareness to that so we can be more mindful is just one element that I'll highlight here when it comes to recruitment and retention. The other thing I'll say before moving on to Goal 2 is that we also are very close. We've made an offer to our collaborative DEI coordinator with SEAM, except the letters are in a different order. It's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, so EDI. We went through multiple rounds of interviews. The assistant superintendents sort of interviewed first and did 2 rounds, and then the superintendents just did a final interview on Monday, and we're ready. SEAM will make the offer on our behalf, but our hope is that bringing that person on board will help push us to our edge even more, particularly in this area, because this is a common goal that all 6 districts share. So again, summative conversation, but formative process going to continue and evolve here, even though we've made great strides.
If that all works out, you think July 1 would be the onboarding date, roughly?
Our hope. It's just dependent on, their other commitments. But I already put in for July 28th with work with the leadership team, so we're on the top of the list. The second goal is about effective entry and return to instruction planning. You've seen a lot of this work really transparently here at school committee and throughout our conversations. The 2 elements that I chose to focus on here were Standard 1, Element E, which is data-informed decision-making, and then also Standard 2, Element A, which is environment. So when we think about data-informed decision-making, there's 2 sub-indicators for this. There's data-informed decision-making, and then plans and goals. And so one of the things that is really important to me is I think data is one of our many superpowers, and the more information we have, the more strategic decisions we're able to make. Any of you who are educators or know an educator intimately, you know that we like to have solutionitis. So when we see a problem, we like to solve it right away. One of the things that I try to do is slow myself down and slow our team down to really study the problem, not just admire the problem, but deeply study it, use that data to actually make sure that we're doing a root cause analysis so that when we solve the problem, I think Access would be a perfect example of this, so that when we solve the problem, we're making the best, smartest, wisest, most sustainable investment that's going to best meet the needs of our kids. So again, this is an area that we're constantly trying to grow in, but using those data protocols and modeling those data protocols in our leadership team meetings is an important part of our work. And next year, we're really excited to reinvigorate the data teams at each of the buildings that was really thriving pre-pandemic, but kind of got distracted a little bit with all that we're doing. And then, of course, action planning, plans and goals, making sure that not only do we create really great plans, but that the plans actually are living and breathing, and that we're constantly referencing them and coming back to them. The strategy overview would be a great thing, a great example for that. So we could accept that the strategy overview takes us to 2023 and just keep plugging our way through those plans. But what we did, starting 3 months ago, was start to reflect on one goal at a time and really think about what have we accomplished, what's the evidence of that, what data do we have that proves that we've accomplished that aspect of our multi-year strategy overview, and then how are we going to revise this, and how are we going to tweak it moving forward? And so that's some of the work that we're doing on Friday, and we can't wait to come to you all on July 27th to share with you what that looks like. So communication and community engagement, there's 2 standards and indicators that I highlight here, 3C and 4C. And so the difference between these 2 standards is, the first one is really about that clear and effective communication. And then when you get to, let me just make sure I'm saying this in the right order, 3C is about the culturally proficient communication, and that's really about not just, am I making documents available to families so that they can translate them? You see evidence of this with lots of folks in the district, myself included, using SMORE. We use that tool for that reason. But 3C really talks about the 2-way dialogue. So creating space where families can interact with us in a culturally proficient way. And some evidence of this would be the ELL family nights that we have had, the Friends of Metco community circles that we have had, and community events that we have had. That's all intentional. That's us pushing ourselves to say, okay, we can push out newsletters, they can be the best and most beautiful newsletters, but how do we truly create that 2-way communication? And so there's lots of evidence of that across the district. And then when we get to standard 4 and we think about communication, this is where, we're talking just more specifically about communication skills, utilizing and modeling strong context and audience-specific interpersonal written and verbal skills. The other part of 3C, just to go backwards a little bit, is family concerns. So making sure that I'm able to address family concerns in a timely way, in a way that leaves them feeling affirmed and supported. And an example I could give from just this morning, I had a parent who had emailed me, and she had questions about the curriculum and how the curriculum gets approved, questions about critical race theory, because she's hearing all of this in the news about critical race theory and the impact that's having on schools or not, or what is it. And so I said, to Ms. Hogan, let's just schedule a time for her to come in. There's a lot to unpack in her questions, and I want to make sure that she leaves with answers. So I was able to walk her through our website, show her where the program of studies lives. She wanted to know about reading lists, so I was able to show her where on the website to get not only what students are reading during the school year, but also what we're recommending for summer. We talked about representation and why we're so focused on equity and human rights and social justice in the Melrose Public Schools, and why that's an important conversation for her. And then I also had a chance to point her to one of the tools that we shared with families many times this year. But if you remember, the launch of it was in the summer, Let's Talk About Race. And it's the 8 weeks of conversations you can have with your family with tools and books and videos. And she was so grateful for all of that. She still had questions, and she was still thinking a lot about some of the things she came in with. But she said, I feel so much better that I had this conversation with you. And so those kinds of opportunities are an example of the ways that we can have 2-way. That was one-on-one, but it was very specific to her family and her family's needs. And then the next goal, it's actually goal 4, but it says goal 3, is student engagement through personalized learning. This work started really as soon as before I started last year. In June, the entire leadership team participated in a virtual conference that was put on by our teachers who had been part of a personalized learning cohort. And as you know, this work has been going on in Melrose for the past 5 or 6 years. So certainly not something new I'm bringing to the table, but something I'm carrying forward and saying, what's my role and responsibility in supporting all of the efforts so that every time there's a new superintendent, everyone doesn't feel like they're getting whiplash and having to reset and identify new goals. So within this goal, one of the things that we really have been thinking about is how do we humanize teaching and learning and leadership this year as we plan forward. Monday, the whole entire leadership team came together again for a full day of professional development, and we had Paul France come, who's the author of Reclaiming Personalized Learning. We had 65 folks, the entire leadership team, plus 30 plus teachers on that call together, and we had the opportunity to think really deeply about what in our work is humanizing, what in our work is dehumanizing, and how do we make sure that we continue to think about the humanizing aspects of our work, including through the personalized learning lens, and really push ourselves and ask tough questions about what we're doing that may not be aligned to that. And I believe that this is really important, an important aspect to the healing process when we think about all that it's going to take for us to recover from this pandemic. We often, because kids are our business, right? We're a kid business. We think about the students a lot. But one of the things that is very clear to me is that we also have to be thinking really intentionally and strategically about the adults. And so we have high expectations here in Melrose, and we should. We also need to have high levels of support for our adults. And so professional development is one way that we nurture our staff. Setting clear goals and making clear what our values and priorities are is another. And so as we continue to grow around personalized learning in order to keep our students more engaged, we really challenge ourselves as a leadership team to make sure that we're walking the walk and creating that same opportunity for staff. And you see lots of evidence of this in the sheer amount of choice that staff have in their professional learning. But then also you will see more evidence in how we revise and reframe our strategy overview. We're really thinking about the words that we're using in that strategy overview and the messages that it sends to all of our stakeholders, staff included. So here's the phases of my entry plan. I think we stayed mostly on schedule. My formative evaluation was more of the dissemination of some of my entry findings. We are working as a team to synthesize the things that I have learned, but also the things that the team has learned this year. And we're building and revising our strategic plan. And so, as I mentioned, you'll have several members of the leadership team here on July 27th to hear what our plan is moving forward. But I can say with 100% confidence that our roadmap to recovery is going to include, 4 key elements. Our continued focus on equity, our continued focus on belonging and relationship building, ensuring that we have clear assessment processes in place so that we can constantly monitor what our students know, what they can do, and what they're ready to learn next in order to accelerate their learning, and then making sure that we have those just-in-time scaffolds in place so that each student can arrive and be confident in where they are, and it's our job as the adults to adapt the environment so they can be successful. So with that, I cannot wait to hear your feedback. I really, truly do look forward to open, honest feedback. I think that's the only way we can grow.
Thank you very much, Superintendent, for that presentation and for all this evidence that's linked in the presentation for us to review. And are there questions, comments for the Superintendent? Mr. O'Connell.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Superintendent. It was very thorough and informative. I was very interested in hearing and thinking about the conversation you had with that parent recently, and obviously you can't meet one-on-one with all of our parents, as great as that would be. And I'm Just curious what your take is on how you take that experience, that, the questions that are presented in that one-on-one setting, and how you then modify, adjust your broader outreach based on that. Does it work that way? Does that kind of one-on-one inform your wider outreach? And if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. For me, when I decide, am I just going to reply to this email, am I going to call them, or am I going to invite them in? Well, partly the invite them in was tricky because of COVID. But I also this year had small group forums. If there was a group of families that were willing to meet together, I would put that out. Or if a parent asked a question and they would say like, well, I've been talking to people in my neighborhood, I would say, do you guys want to get on a Google Meet or a Zoom? So I was able to do that a couple of times this year. And that was great because then it was like a small forum. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and I know I've talked to Chair McAndrew about, is our website has to be a better vehicle for our message. And Neil Ellis and I were just talking about this same issue this morning, and we were really thinking about, for me, when you come to our website, the things that matter most should be predominant. And the things that matter most to us on our website right now are really buried. When I showed that parent where all these things were, she instantly was like apologetic that she didn't find it on her own. And I'm like, no, trust me, I Google search most things to find things on our website because it's just not intuitive in the way that it's set up right now. And there's so much information on there, and not all of it is current. So I think our website is an absolute must. And then one of the summer projects we have, it keeps kind of get pushed to the back this year, but really reinvigorating our Facebook presence, developing an Instagram presence, and amplifying our Twitter presence. I think, social media is where a lot of families live, and so if I can put reinforcing messages out, if I can capture some of those questions and, put my parent hat on and say, like, yeah, I get it. Like, that is a question. That is confusing. I do hear that message a lot in the media. Then we can start to reinforce in that way. But again, it's, I call people at all hours of the day and night. If they're willing to take my call, I'll have a conversation with them. And I find those conversations to be so rich. And it's usually not, sometimes it's not even the question they put in their email. Once I get on the phone with them, they're like, oh, thank you, I don't want to take too much of your time, but this is really the issue. And it's slightly different. So to me, it's, whenever I can, it's always worth it to have the call or have the meeting, even if it's only one parent.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments for the superintendent?
Quick comment.
Ms. Razzie Thomas, please.
There's no one who loves a rubric as much as you, Dr. K. Just gotta say, because the evaluations the rubrics are unbelievable, but you know it backwards and forwards. It's impressive. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you. And I do think it's kind of absurd that you'd need a public evaluation. So, other quick thing. When we saw your entry timeline, I laughed. I'm like, she couldn't do that. There was no way she could do that. Because as soon as you started, you had to figure out the return to instruction plan with your leadership team. So yes, you did a nice job entering, but it was also a major crisis. So it was different than any other year would have been.
Yeah, I feel in a lot of ways like this will be year one.
Yeah,
that was just a crisis test, crisis response.
Yeah, and I do also really want to see us. I know it happened a lot at the end of the year at the school that my kids go to. The joy was returning in schools. That's what the kids need, the teachers need it, the families need it. We got to get back to positive school culture and just the joy of being together and bring the stress down and reset.
We have to.
Right?
We have to. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Razzie Thomas. Any other questions or comments at this time? Seeing none, I know we'll all be meeting individually with the superintendent and have our formal evaluations in next time. So thank you for all of that. I just wanted to add one more thanks, to you for this year, and also to your family, to Mike and Ava. So please just pass along our thanks. I know I talked to you on the phone many times after 9 p.m. and I'm not. I know we probably won't have to continue that. Let's hope. But I just appreciate your tremendous dedication to the district. So thank you, and thanks to them.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay, moving right along. In the packet, we also have, and on the agenda announcements, the rolling agenda updated. It's pretty much the same as the last time you saw it, with just a few dates moved around, including, as was mentioned, the strategy overview, which we will see next time on July 27th. Are there any questions or comments on the rolling agenda? Seeing none. Next is our outreach reports. I know tomorrow night we have the Juneteenth flag raising in the city of Melrose over at the library at 7 p.m. Any other comments or outreach reports that the mayor or anyone else want to mention?
On the Juneteenth piece, folks should understand it's a little bit
Mike,
more.
please, so the folks at home can hear you.
On the Juneteenth piece, it's a little bit more than just a flag raising. It's I don't think it'll last more than an hour, but there'll be some speakers. There'll be a musical performance. It's going to be a good first cut at it, a good first stab at it. Looking forward to it. Hope folks are available can come on down.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else? Okay, we do have need tonight for an executive session. We will not be returning to regular session. And our executive session agenda items are as follows. The executive session minutes of June 8th, 2021, and the following items. To discuss strategy with respect to negotiating a successor collective bargaining agreement with the Teamsters Local Union 25 International Brotherhood of Teamsters Administrators Unit, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the school committee. Secondly, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiating a successor collective bargaining agreement with the Melrose Education Association Unit B, the secretaries, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the school committee. Thirdly, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiating a successor collective bargaining agreement with the Melrose Education Association Unit C, the paraprofessionals, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the school committee. And fourth, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiating a side letter of agreement with the Melrose Education Association Unit A, the teachers, regarding additional hours during the summer and school vacations for secondary guidance counselors, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the school committee. We do need a roll call vote to enter into executive session, and just a reminder, we will adjourn from there. Is there a motion to adjourn to executive session made by Mayor Broder, seconded by Ms. DeSalm? Ms. Hogan, will you please call the roll call?
Mr. Obremski?
Yes.
Mayor Broder?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Ms. Rozzi Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. DeSelm?
Yes.